More a little bit later on the programme. But right now, let's go through the papers and the stories inside with Nathaniel Ogunniyi, political commentator with Young Voices UK. Nathaniel, good morning.
Good morning, Rosie.
What about these allegations here that Prince Andrew did ask, if we're according to this email, for his personal police officer to do investigation work that he dictated to them about, in an attempt really to smear Virginia Giuffre?
Yes, so the reporting suggests that there was a request to the on-duty police protection officer to look into Virginia. The story suggests that her details, including date of birth and social security number, had been shared with the on-duty officer for investigation. This comes after a slew of allegations against the prince. And of course, you remember a while back, he had this interview with Emily Maitlis, which at the time, I think he had planned to use to sort of clear his name, but of course added further fuel to the fire about allegations between links from him to the sort of alleged ring in the States.
Yeah, I mean, the Times copy here says, look, Buckingham Palace is understood to believe it can now put the furore around Andrew behind it. Do you think they can? Have they done enough?
Frankly, I think this story probably does have a bit longer to run. You do mention that there is the king off to the Vatican later this week, and there is it's an attempt to sort of put this behind them before that visit takes place. But I think given the public interest in this, given that it is on the front page of a number of newspapers, given that we're talking about it, on the radio on a Monday morning, I think there is a lot of public interest in the case. I think anything involving the royal family generally has a higher standard. I think when we look to the royal family, we tend to look to them to exhibit the highest standards of behaviour. And so anywhere that they fall short naturally gives a lot of interest.
Yeah, of course. Front page of the Daily Telegraph here is the headline, Trump tells Kyiv, take the deal or be destroyed. It's more details of what happened in their meeting on Friday. Apparently, Donald Trump was pretty furious, shouting and swearing. The paper says Mr. Trump threw aside Ukrainian maps of the battlefield and pressured Mr. Zelensky to surrender the Donetsk region to Russia. What's your sense of how that meeting went?
Yes, so it seems like that meeting did go quite badly. It seems like there were quite a sort of a high tensions, shall we say. And I think at the centre of this is, as you say, Donetsk region. So there is a discussion there because Kyiv still holds about a quarter of the province, but the Russians have asked that the Ukrainians withdraw all of their forces and cede the entirety of that region over to them. And so there is a sort of difficulty there, or there's a tension there, whereby I think Trump may be keener for the war to end, especially given the extent to which it relies on US financial and military support, which he has indicated would come to an end if the war isn't ended on his terms. So he's sort of pushing for a swifter solution to the war, and that may involve some compromises that Ukraine, frankly, are not happy with. According to the Times, the story in the Telegraph, the US president told Zelensky that he was losing the war, and if Putin wants, he will destroy you. And I think that's a sharp change in tone from the support that we've seen for Ukraine, not only from the UK, but from other countries and previous US presidents.
And you wonder how much that had to do with the phone call he'd had with President Putin just the night before. We know Trump is going to meet Putin in Budapest at some point, potentially in the next fortnight. And that is, of course, in pursuit of a peace deal, but it's got to be one both parties find palatable, and that conversation, I guess, doesn't bring that much optimism for that. Front page of the Times here, the government have pledged to build 1.5 million homes. Maybe that is under pressure. The headline here is the cost to build a home is to rise £50,000 with what they're describing here as an eco-stealth tax. What are the plans that the Times have discovered?
So the Times here found a plan to raise the taxes on some parts of the building process for homes and infrastructure. So if you're clearing a site, there are taxes on on the sort of environmental sustainability bit when you clear the site before you build new homes or infrastructure on it. And the Times now suggest that the stealth tax will add £50,000 to the cost of building a new house. It'll add costs to the building of any infrastructure, and that it will net the Treasury about £1 billion. And look, I feel quite strongly about this. As a young person who wants to buy a home at some point, adding £50,000 to the cost of buying a home, I think is probably pushing things in the wrong direction. You talked briefly about the 1.5 million home target that Labour have by the end of this parliament. The Office of Budget Responsibility, who is sort of an independent government forecaster, suggests that the government are going to miss that target. Homes England, who are responsible for building homes in England, have also suggested that the government are going to miss that target. So it doesn't really seem like those plans are coming to fruition. On the other side, there's a Conservative pledge to abolish stamp duty, which seems a bit far off, given that we're not around the corner from an election. But that is more the direction we should be heading in, I think, rather than adding £50,000 to the cost of a home.
Yeah. Right, well, we'll see. It's particularly the cost of the production of the homes. It's, more battles between the Treasury and other departments trying to engineer the promises that they pledged to the public. Other stories politically in the papers today. The Prime Minister has been warned of a green wave exodus over his sort of obsession with what's happening and losing votes to the right, perhaps, in trying to stave off Nigel Farage. They've taken their eye off voters on the further left. We saw last week there was a situation where I think Green Party membership overtook the Liberal Democrats. How much do you see a problem of there being an exodus of voters from the Labour Party right into the hands of Zach Polanski?
So there is clearly a threat to Labour. You see that there are a good number of Labour voters who are dissatisfied with the direction of travel that the government's taken, and they are dissatisfied on both sides. So you see some on the left going towards the Green Party, and indeed you mentioned Zach Polanski, who seems to be getting more traction than either of his predecessors. And then on the other side, you see a number of people leaving the Labour Party, or people who voted Labour last time, who are now saying they wouldn't do so again. And they're now going to other parties. So some are going to Reform, some are going to the Conservatives, some are going to the Lib Dems, right? Labour is sort of losing voters on both sides. I think the latest numbers say that the Greens would win 13% of votes. According to this poll, that would be 3.75 million people based on turnout at the last election. That's double what they got last time, right? So it's significant that sort of dissatisfaction with the government's direction is driving people off to the Green Party. But it is also driving people, I suppose, to Reform and a number of other places.
Yeah, overall, 15% of Labour's voters said they would back the Greens at the next election. This is a real moment that they can, from the Green Party's perspective, seize on, capitalise on. And ironically, they are using similar tactics to that Nigel Farage is to capitalise interest quite successfully.
Yes, and so in the same way that Nigel Farage is quite good at social media, and that has fed a lot into their approach from Reform. I think the Green Party is sort of have a similar strategy. But you see in a number of places, the tactics used by those on the left and those used by those on the right are somewhat similar, right? People sometimes talk about the horseshoe theory of politics, whereby, you look at parties on the left and parties on the right, and there's sort of some unity between them. In the same way a horseshoe bends back round, you see you see that Reform and the Greens actually do have some sort of tactical similarity.
Yeah. Final story we should touch on, and this might come from the business news a little bit later. Why penguin bars that you might be packing into children or grandchildren's packed lunches today can no longer be described as chocolate, because the increased price of cocoa means, McVitie's, other manufacturers have had to reduce the level of cocoa in the products so far that they don't actually now qualify as a chocolate bar.
Yes, so manufacturers are sort of scrambling to manage the increased price of cocoa on the global market. So, due to falling harvests, the price of cocoa on the global markets has gone up significantly. And so now they are trying to reduce the cocoa content within their chocolate, or should I say, chocolate flavored products. Without increasing prices for consumers. And so some have decided to make those products smaller in what people call shrinkflation. You keep the price the same, but you sort of shrink the product. Others have decided to increase the proportion of palm oil and shea butter in their cocoa solids. And so it's all sort of about trying to cut costs or cut corners somewhere without trying to cut quality. And it seems, according to their sort of studies done when comparing the two products, that people like them the same. I suppose their sales data in a few months' time will tell us whether that's true or not.
Absolutely. And I think, well, would you prefer a changed recipe or a smaller bar? Because the other option, of course, is shrinkflation, which causes a lot of upset when it happens. Thank you so much, Nathaniel, going through the papers with us this morning.